Dawn has a way of making us believe that everything will be all right. The light is soft, the weather is calm, and the world appears to rest in quiet balance. But in the wild, peace is often only a thin illusion, one that hides danger just moments away. On that morning, along Africa's Savuti Channel, a small lion cub stepped into a fragile space between life and death. No one in the pride knew that within minutes, their future would depend on a single, irreversible moment. And the most unsettling truth of all was that help would come from the last place anyone would ever expect. Dawn arrived quietly over the Savuti Channel in northern Botswana, the kind of dawn that seemed to promise safety simply by how gentle it looked. Pale light spread across the water, turning the surface into brushed gold, while the tall grasses along the banks stood motionless in the cool morning air. For a brief moment, the wilderness appeared calm, almost forgiving, as if the dangers of the night had been set aside. Moving slowly along the edge of the channel was a small pride of lions. At its front walked Mara, a seasoned lioness whose body bore the subtle scars of years spent surviving in one of Africa's most unforgiving landscapes. She moved with deliberate confidence, her senses alert to every sound and scent. Behind her followed a handful of cubs, still young enough to depend entirely on her instincts and protection. Among them was Leo, the smallest of the group, a cub whose legs were not yet strong and whose steps always lagged half a beat behind the others. Mara knew Leo's weakness well. She adjusted her pace for him, slowing just enough to keep him within reach, though instinct urged her to move faster and farther from the exposed riverbank. In the wild, hesitation often meant death, but a mother's awareness carried a different weight. Leo was more than just another cub. He was the fragile thread upon which the future of this small pride quietly depended. The Savuti Channel was beautiful in the early light, but beauty in the African wilderness was often a disguise. The ground near the water was damp and unstable, shaped by receding floods and softened by the night air. Mara had crossed terrain like this countless times, her powerful limbs instinctively finding solid ground. For her, it was routine. For Leo, it was unfamiliar and dangerous. As the cubs followed their mother, Leo's paws sank slightly into the wet earth. He paused, uncertain, and lifted his head as if listening for reassurance. Mara glanced back, her amber eyes meeting his for a fraction of a second. The look was calm, steady, meant to tell him to keep moving, to trust her. It was a silent language shaped by survival, one passed from generation to generation. The rest of the pride continued forward, unaware that this quiet crossing would soon become a moment etched into memory. Birds called softly from the reeds, and somewhere in the distance, an unseen animal splashed. Through shallow water, it was the kind of scene often captured in a wildlife documentary, framed as a peaceful snapshot of nature. Yet beneath that stillness lay forces that cared nothing for peace, only for balance and opportunity. Leo took another step. The ground beneath his paw shifted unexpectedly, a subtle slide that broke the rhythm of his movement. His small body wobbled, and in that instant, the fragile promise of the morning fractured. The edge of the riverbank, worn thin by erosion, gave way just enough to steal his footing. Leo stumbled forward, a startled sound escaping his throat as his hind leg slipped on the slick clay. Mara stopped abruptly. The sound was faint, almost lost in the open air, but to a mother it rang louder than any roar. She turned, muscles tightening, her attention snapping back toward the river's edge. Leo had not fallen completely into the water, but he was no longer safely on the bank. He clung to a narrow ledge of crumbling earth, his small claws scraping uselessly against the wet surface as he struggled to regain balance. The dawn, moments earlier so calm, suddenly felt thin and fragile. Leo cried out again, the sound high and sharp, filled with confusion more than fear. He did not yet understand the danger he faced, only that the ground beneath him was no longer reliable. Mara stared at him from above, her body tense, her mind racing through distances and angles. One wrong move could send the ledge collapsing entirely. Behind her, the other cubs sensed the change. They stopped, huddling close, their instincts warning them that something was wrong. None of them moved closer. None of them made a sound. In the wild, even the youngest understood when to freeze. Mara took a cautious step toward the edge, testing the ground before committing her weight. The earth shifted slightly under her paw, and she withdrew it at once. The river below was deeper than it appeared, its dark surface hiding what lay beneath. This was no place for mistakes. For the first time that morning, the Savuti Channel revealed its true nature. It was not a peaceful stretch of water meant for rest or reflection. It was a boundary between safety and loss, between life that continued and life that ended without warning. In the world of endangered species and relentless natural selection, moments like this decided everything. Leo's cries grew more urgent as his strength faded, each sound echoing off the bank and into the open plains beyond. Mara lowered her head slightly, her breath steady but heavy, her eyes never leaving him. The calm of the dawn had vanished, replaced by a quiet tension that pressed in from all sides. Somewhere beneath the surface of the water, unseen forces were already stirring. This was only the beginning. The ledge beneath Leo's paws continued to crumble in slow, silent fragments, each grain of wet clay surrendering to gravity. He tried to pull himself upward, but the surface offered no grip, only cold. Resistance. His cries grew sharper now, no longer confused, but edged with fear. The small cub had begun to understand that the ground itself had turned against him. Above him, Mara stood frozen at the edge of the bank. Her body was built for speed and power, for decisive strikes and sudden chases, yet in this moment she could do nothing but measure distance. The drop was steeper than it had first appeared, and the soil beneath her paws was unstable. One careless step would not save her son, it would condemn them both. She lowered her head and studied Leo's position with painful focus. He was perched on a narrow shelf of earth no wider than his own body, his hind legs slipping each time he shifted his weight. Below him, the water moved slowly, deceptively calm, reflecting the pale sky like polished glass. To an untrained eye, it might have seemed harmless. To Mara, it was a warning. Leo reached upward with one paw, stretching toward his mother. His claws scraped the bank, leaving thin, desperate lines in the clay before sliding back again. The sound pierced the still air, echoing along the channel. For Mara, it was unbearable. Every instinct urged her forward, demanded that she act, that she close the distance at any cost. But instinct alone was not enough. She tested the ground once more, shifting her weight carefully. The earth gave a subtle tremor beneath her, and she pulled back immediately. The bank could not support a leap, not here, not now. In the wild, strength without precision was useless, and Mara knew it. The risk was too great. A fall would mean broken bones, and broken bones meant death, for her cub, for herself, and for the rest of the pride that depended on her. Behind her, the other cubs remained motionless. They sensed the danger without understanding it. Their small bodies pressed low to the ground. Even they seemed to know that this was not a moment to draw attention, not a time to make sound. Silence settled over them like a shared breath held too long. Leo's cries shifted again, growing hoarse as panic drained his energy. His chest rose and fell rapidly, each breath shallow. He pressed his side against the bank, trying to make himself smaller, trying to become part of the earth that was betraying him. The ledge trembled under his movement, sending another small clump of mud sliding into the water below. The splash was soft, but it carried far. Mara's ears flicked at once. The sound triggered something ancient within her, a warning passed down through countless generations. Water like this was never empty. In regions like the Savuti Channel, where wildlife thrived and struggled side by side, the river was a shared resource and a shared risk. Predators and prey crossed its edges daily, each calculating danger with every step. Mara lifted her head slowly and scanned the surface below. The water remained smooth, almost peaceful, but she did not trust it. She had hunted near rivers before. She had lost kills to unseen, jaws that struck without warning. She knew that danger in water did not announce itself. Leo whimpered again, weaker now, his voice trembling. He tried once more to climb, but his legs failed him. His body slid an inch lower, closer to the dark line where earth met water. His breathing grew ragged, each breath pulling in fear along with air. Mara let out a low, controlled sound from deep in her chest, not a roar, but a warning meant only for her cub. Stay still. Don't move. It was the same sound she had used when teaching the cubs to hide from distant threats, when patience meant survival. Whether Leo understood or not, she did not know, but the sound steadied her, anchoring her to the moment. Time stretched painfully. Seconds felt like minutes as Mara weighed every option. She could not reach him from above. She could not descend without risking collapse. The wilderness offered no second chances, no safety net, no emergency rescue. There was no wildlife insurance policy in nature, no protection plan for moments like this. Survival depended entirely on judgment. Leo's strength was fading. His cries softened into breathy whines, his head drooping as exhaustion set in. Fear had taken its toll faster than any wound. Mara saw it clearly now. This could not continue much longer. The ledge would not hold forever, and neither would her cub. The sun climbed higher, its warmth doing nothing to ease the tension. What had begun as a peaceful morning had become a silent standoff between a mother's limits and the unforgiving reality of the land. The calm beauty often celebrated in a nature documentary concealed a harsher truth. In the wild, even the smallest mistake could carry devastating consequences. Mara remained at the edge, muscles taut. Eyes fixed on Leo, she did not look away. She could not. Somewhere deep beneath the water's surface, unseen currents shifted, and the balance of the moment teetered on a fragile edge. The real danger had not yet revealed itself, but it was drawing closer with every passing second. Mara remained at the edge of the riverbank, her powerful frame tense but restrained, as if held in place by an invisible force. Every instinct within her demanded action. She was built to charge, to seize, to protect with raw strength. Yet the ground beneath her told a different story. It shifted with the slightest pressure, whispering a warning she could not ignore. In this moment, strength alone was not a solution. It was a liability. She lowered herself slowly, spreading her weight as carefully as possible. The bank responded with a faint slide of soil, barely visible, but enough to make her pause. One more step, one misjudged movement, and the entire edge could collapse. Mara understood the risk with chilling clarity. If she fell, there would be no second attempt, no recovery plan. Nature did not offer coverage, no safety net, no form of protection for even its most powerful creatures. Below her, Leo clung to the crumbling ledge, his small body pressed flat against the damp earth. His breathing was uneven now, shallow and quick, each breath carrying fear. The energy he had used to cry out was fading. Where panic had once filled his voice, there was now exhaustion. His claws, still scraping at the clay, left marks that disappeared almost as soon as they were made. Mara watched every movement with painful focus. She calculated distance, angle, weight, an internal assessment refined by years of survival. In another setting, she could have leapt without hesitation. On solid ground, she could close the distance in a heartbeat. But here, the laws of physics ruled without mercy. The terrain had stripped her of every advantage she possessed. Behind her, the other cubs shifted uneasily. They did not approach, but they sensed the gravity of the moment. Their small bodies pressed together, eyes fixed on their brother below. Even without understanding the full danger, they felt the tension that hung in the air, heavy and unrelenting. Mara let out a low, vibrating growl, not of anger, but of frustration. A sound born from knowing exactly what needed to be done and realizing it could not be done safely. She had faced rival predators, defended territory, and hunted under the harshest conditions. Those battles had clear rules: attack or retreat, win or lose. This situation offered no such clarity. The river below remained deceptively calm. Sunlight reflected off its surface, masking the depth and the unseen life beneath. In regions like this, water was both a source of survival and a silent threat. Animals gathered here daily, drawn by necessity, aware that danger was always close. Mara had learned long ago that still water demanded caution. It concealed too much. Leo shifted again, his body sliding a fraction lower. The movement sent a thin ribbon of mud slipping into the river with a soft sound that echoed louder in Mara's ears than any roar. Her head snapped up, eyes scanning the water instinctively. Nothing broke the surface, nothing moved. Yet the absence of movement offered no comfort. Time stretched unbearably. Each second felt longer than the last, as if the morning itself had slowed to witness the outcome. Mara's muscles ached with restraint. Every part of her was ready to spring, to risk everything for her cub. But experience held her back. A reckless choice now would only add another life to the danger below. This was the cruel balance of the wild, a reality rarely seen by those who viewed nature from a distance. Survival was not just about power, it was about judgment. In ecosystems where endangered species fought daily against loss of habitat and relentless natural threats, even the strongest mothers were bound by limits. Leo's head drooped. His breaths came in short bursts, his sides trembling with effort. He was running out of strength, and Mara knew it. The realization struck her with a force sharper than any wound. She could feel the narrowing window of a bead. Opportunity closing, each moment tightening like a trap. She lowered her head until it was nearly level with the bank, her eyes locked on Leo's. For a brief instant, their gazes met. There was no understanding in the cub's eyes, only fear and trust. He trusted her completely, even as the ground failed him. Mara stayed where she was, motionless, her body coiled with restrained energy. The wilderness around them remained indifferent, governed by rules older than any pride, any bond. The calm of the riverbank felt false now, a thin veil stretched over a situation spiraling toward disaster. Somewhere beneath the surface of the water, unseen and unhurried, the balance of the moment continued to shift. And with each passing breath, Mara felt the truth settle heavily upon her. This was a battle she could not win with strength alone. The first sign was not a sound, but a change in the river itself. The surface, which had been smooth and reflective moments earlier, shifted almost imperceptibly, as if disturbed by a breath from below. Mara noticed it at once. Her gaze snapped downward, every sense sharpening, her body responding before her thoughts could fully form. In places like the Savuti channel, still water was never empty. It hid what it chose to hide. Leo did not see it at first. He was too focused on holding himself in place, too exhausted to notice the subtle warning written across the surface of the river. His paws trembled against the slick clay, his claws dull from scraping at earth that refused to hold him. When he cried out again, the sound was weaker, strained, carrying less panic and more desperation. Then the water parted. A dark shape rose slowly from beneath the surface, so gradual it seemed unreal. The flattened head appeared first, followed by the ridged outline of a massive body. Brutus, an old Nile crocodile, emerged without urgency, his movements practiced and precise. His eyes, pale and unblinking, fixed instantly on the small figure clinging to the bank. This was not curiosity. It was recognition. Mara's muscles tightened until they ached. A low growl rumbled in her chest, vibrating through her body and into the ground beneath her paws. She knew this enemy well. Crocodiles like Brutus were ancient hunters, survivors shaped by patience rather than speed. They did not rush. They waited. And when they struck, they rarely failed. The crocodile remained half-submerged, his powerful tail hidden, his body aligned perfectly with the ledge where Leo struggled. He did not thrash or splash. There was no display of aggression. His stillness was deliberate, calculated. To Brutus, the cub was already measured, distance, angle, timing, all silently assessed. Leo sensed the change before he understood it. His cries stopped abruptly, replaced by shallow, panicked breaths. He pressed his body tighter against the bank, as if trying to disappear into the clay itself. His eyes widened as he stared down at the water. Finally registering the shape that did not belong to the river. Mara roared then, a sharp, furious sound that tore through the quiet morning. It was a warning, a threat, and a plea all at once. The sound echoed along the channel, startling birds from the reeds and carrying across the open land. But Brutus did not react. He did not retreat. His gaze never left Leo. The distance between them began to close. With slow, powerful movements, the crocodile advanced, his body gliding forward beneath the surface. Each stroke of his tail was controlled, conserving energy. The water rippled softly around him, betraying just enough motion to mark his approach. For Mara, every inch he gained felt like a countdown. She paced along the edge of the bank, her movements sharp and restless. She searched desperately for a point where she could descend safely, a place where the ground might support her weight. Each step revealed the same truth. The earth was unstable everywhere. The bank had become a barrier as deadly as the predator below. Mara leaned forward, stretching her neck as far as she dared, claws digging into the soil. She could almost reach Leo, almost. The gap remained just out of range, a cruel measure of distance that separated life from loss. She pulled back, knowing that pushing further would only bring the bank down with her. Brutus drew closer. Sunlight glinted off his armored back as he shifted slightly, adjusting his position. The image was stark, almost cinematic, the kind of moment often frozen in a wildlife documentary to illustrate the unforgiving balance of nature. But there was nothing distant or educational about it now. This was not a lesson. It was reality. Leo whimpered softly, his strength nearly gone. His body sagged, sliding another fraction closer to the water. Mud smeared his fur, and his breathing became erratic, shallow gasps that betrayed his fear. He had no understanding of predators or territory, only the instinctive knowledge that something below meant danger. Mara's roar had turned hoarse. She lowered her head, eyes burning, her entire being focused on her cub. In the wild, there was no emergency response, no rescue service, no form of coverage against moments like this. Survival depended on instinct, timing, and sometimes on forces beyond control. Brutus paused just a few body lengths away. The stillness was unbearable. It was the pause of a hunter, certain of the outcome, gathering strength for the final move. Mara froze as well, her body rigid, her heart pounding against her ribs. The morning sun climbed higher, casting light over a scene balanced on the edge of disaster. Mother and cub above, ancient predator below. Between them, only a narrow strip of crumbling earth and a few heartbeats of time. The real test had begun. The distance between Brutus and the ledge closed with agonizing slowness. He moved as if time itself belonged to him, each motion deliberate, each adjustment exact. The river no longer looked calm. Beneath the surface, power gathered, coiled, and ready. To Mara, the water felt alive with threat, a place where outcomes were decided without mercy or appeal. Leo pressed himself flat against the bank, his small body trembling. The strength he had clung to was nearly gone. His cries faded into shallow, uneven breaths, each one a struggle. He tried once more to pull himself upward, but his paws slipped, leaving only fresh streaks of mud. The ledge crumbled again, just a fraction, but enough to send a chill through Mara's spine. She stepped closer, then stopped. The ground shifted under her weight, a warning she could not ignore. One more step would be reckless. One leap would be final. She understood the mathematics of the moment with brutal clarity. Angle, force, collapse. There would be no second chance, no appeal, no kind of protection plan against gravity and water. In the wild, there was no insurance policy for loss, no legal recourse to undo a fatal decision. Mara lowered her head and roared, once, then again, her voice raw and breaking. It was a sound meant to drive predators away, to claim territory, to command fear. But Brutus did not flinch. He had survived decades by waiting out threats far louder than this. His eyes remained fixed on Leo, patient, certain. The crocodile shifted, dipping his head slightly beneath the surface. The movement was subtle, but it carried a promise of violence. This was not a warning. It was preparation. The water around him darkened as his massive body aligned for the strike, tail tensing, jaws poised. Leo saw it then. His eyes widened, and a thin, desperate sound escaped his throat, a final plea that carried no words. He pressed his face into the clay, as if trying to become part of the bank, as if stillness might make him invisible. His breathing stuttered, fear stealing the rhythm from his chest. Mara felt something inside her fracture. She leaned forward, claws digging deep into the soil, stretching every inch she could without collapsing the edge. Her body trembled with restraint. She could see the exact place where she needed to be, the precise point where her reach would meet Leo. The space between them felt impossibly wide. The world seemed to narrow to this single frame. Mother above, Savuti, bindi up above, cub below, predator beneath. Birds had gone silent. Even the wind felt distant. Time slowed until each heartbeat sounded loud in Mara's ears. Brutus surged forward. The water broke around him as his body accelerated, powerful and sudden. His jaws opened, rows of teeth catching the sunlight like blades. The river erupted with motion, sending ripples racing toward the bank. This was the moment he had waited for, the moment when hesitation ended. Mara's roar tore free again, harsher now, edged with despair. She reached out instinctively, swiping at empty air, knowing even as she did it that she was too far away. Her claws closed on nothing. The realization hit her all at once. There was no move left to make. Leo squeezed. His eyes shut. In those final heartbeats, there was no miracle waiting in the wings, no dramatic rescue written into the laws of nature. The wilderness did not operate on hope or fairness. It operated on opportunity and outcome. For countless animals, this was how life ended, sudden, decisive, without explanation. The river churned as Brutus lunged, his momentum unstoppable. The space between his jaws and the ledge vanished in an instant. For Mara, the future collapsed into a single, unbearable truth. This was how it ended, not with a fight, not with a choice, but with a mother forced to watch. The morning light felt cruel now, illuminating a scene too sharp, too final. There was nothing left to calculate, nothing left to risk. The moment stretched, heavy and irreversible, as if the world itself held its breath. And then, just as fate seemed sealed, the river answered in a way no one could have predicted. The river exploded, not from Brutus's strike, but from a force far larger and far less calculated. The water heaved upward as if struck from below, sending a violent surge across the channel. A massive shape burst through the surface, dark and unstoppable, scattering spray and mud in every direction. For a split second, even the crocodile hesitated. It was Koba, a fully grown African buffalo. He did not come quietly. His entrance was pure chaos. Horns lowered, shoulders driving forward, hooves churning the shallow edge of the channel into froth. Koba was not responding to Leo's cries. He did not see a cub in danger or a mother in despair. He was reacting to something far more basic and far more powerful, an intrusion into his drinking territory. Brutus recoiled as the buffalo's bulk slammed into the water near him. The precision of the crocodile's attack dissolved instantly into confusion. Waves crashed against the bank, and the calm geometry of predator and prey collapsed into disorder. The river, moments ago a silent executioner, became a battleground. Mara froze, stunned by the sudden reversal. Her roar died in her throat as she watched the scene below transform in an instant. Where there had been certainty and inevitability, there was now turbulence and noise. Koba bellowed, a deep, thunderous sound that rolled across the channel, meant not as a warning, but as a declaration. This water was his. Brutus twisted away, snapping instinctively, but the buffalo's mass gave him no clean angle. Koba charged again, hooves striking submerged ground with brutal force. Mud and water surged upward, obscuring everything. The crocodile, built for ambush and precision, was suddenly outmatched by sheer aggression. For Leo, the world became a blur of motion and sound. He pressed himself flat against the ledge as waves slammed into the bank, soaking his small body. The force rattled the crumbling earth beneath him, but it also did something else, something no one could have planned. The surge of water lifted him, only slightly, only inches. But inches mattered. A powerful wave rolled against the bank and pushed Leo closer to the top, shifting his position just enough to change the impossible into the barely possible. His body slid upward, scraping against the mud until his front paws found a fraction more purchase. Mara saw it instantly. Her mind, sharp with desperation, locked onto the change. This was no rescue. This was not kindness. It was a moment created by chance, by territorial fury, by the collision of forces that had nothing to do with her cub. But it was a moment, and in the wild, moments like this were everything. She dropped her body low, spreading her weight, claws driving deep into the earth. Every movement was controlled now, stripped of panic. She did not look at the crocodile. She did not look at the buffalo. Her entire world narrowed to Leo and the narrow window the river had opened. Below, Koba continued his assault, forcing Brutus farther out, away from the bank. The crocodile disappeared beneath the churning water, retreating from the unexpected threat. Koba bellowed again, satisfied only when the immediate danger was gone, his attention already shifting back to the simple need that had drawn him here. To drink, to stand, to exist unchallenged. None of it was intentional. That was the cruel and astonishing truth of it. Leo was not being saved by mercy or courage or even awareness. He was being spared by accident, by the unplanned overlap of survival paths in a shared landscape. In places like this, where wildlife conservationists and safari guides often spoke of balance, this was what balance truly looked like: violent, indifferent, and occasionally miraculous. Mara stretched forward, muscles trembling, her breath steady despite the pounding in her chest. She knew she had seconds, no more. The water would settle, the chaos would fade. And when it did, the river would reclaim its rules. Leo whimpered, weak but alive, his small body still clinging to the bank. He did not know why the danger had shifted, only that something had changed. His eyes searched for his mother, finding her gaze locked onto him with fierce clarity. This was the opening fate had offered, and Mara intended to take it. The river was still in turmoil, but the violence was already drifting away from the bank. Koba's massive body moved farther downstream, his attention fixed on reclaiming the stretch of water he considered his own. Brutus was gone now, pulled back into deeper currents, the failed hunt abandoned without hesitation. The clash that had shattered the moment was ending as abruptly as it had begun. For Mara, none of that mattered. She saw only the change in Leo's position, the slight rise of his small body, the way his front paws now rested just a little higher than before. It was not safety. It was not even stability. It was a margin so thin it could vanish with the next ripple, but it was enough to rewrite what had seemed inevitable seconds earlier. Mara lowered herself until her chest nearly touched the ground. She widened her stance, spreading her weight across the bank to avoid another collapse. Her claws sank deep into the soil, anchoring her where she was. Every movement was deliberate, stripped of urgency, guided by experience rather than fear. This was not the moment for speed. It was the moment for precision. Leo felt the shift before he understood it. The water that had soaked him moments earlier was settling. The ledge beneath him held for now. He lifted his head, blinking mud from his eyes, and saw his mother closer than she had been at any point since he slipped. The sight steadied him. His breathing slowed just enough. Mara extended her neck, stretching forward inch by inch. The distance between them shrank, but it was still dangerous. Too much force would pull Leo loose. Too little would fail entirely. In the wild, there were no second attempts, no backup plans, no kind of coverage for mistakes. This was a single calculation, and it had to be exact. She opened her jaws and gently took hold of the loose skin at the back of Leo's neck. The same careful grip she had used countless times when he was younger, lifting him from place to place when his legs were too weak to carry him. The instinct was old, deeply ingrained, but the stakes had never been higher. Leo went still. He did not struggle. He did not cry out. Something in him recognized the moment, the necessity of trust. His small body tensed, then relaxed, surrendering to the familiar pressure of his mother's hold. For a heartbeat, everything balanced on that single connection. Mara began to pull. She did not jerk or rush. She leaned back slowly, transferring the effort through her shoulders and hind legs, using the full strength of her body without wasting a fraction of it. The bank groaned softly under the strain, but it held. Mud slid, water dripped. Leo's body lifted, scraping against the edge as gravity resisted every inch. Time stretched again, but this time it felt different. It was no longer the heavy pause of waiting for disaster. It was the focused silence of effort, the kind that demanded everything and allowed no distraction. In that moment, Mara was not a predator, not a symbol of power or dominance. She was simply a lifeline. Leo's back paws cleared the ledge. With one final, controlled pull, Mara drew him fully onto the bank. His small body collapsed against the earth, trembling, soaked, alive. The danger below him vanished in an instant, replaced by solid ground and the warmth of his mother's presence. Mara released her grip and stood over him, her body forming a shield without conscious thought. She lowered her head and began to lick him, firm strokes of her tongue clearing mud from his fur, grounding him in the familiar rhythm of care. Each movement was a quiet confirmation. You are here. You survived. It is over. Leo pressed himself against her chest, his breath uneven but steadying. The fear that had drained him moments earlier ebbed away, replaced by exhaustion so deep it left him limp. Behind them the other cubs stirred, inching closer now that the threat had passed, their small forms drawn by instinct toward safety. The river settled into its earlier calm, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Sunlight returned to the water's surface, smoothing it into a mirror once more. Koba stood downstream, drinking, indifferent to the life he had spared without ever knowing it. In landscapes like this, where wildlife conservationists often spoke of fragile balance and interconnected survival, this was the truth behind those words. Mara remained still, her head lowered, her breath slowing. The chance that had saved Leo had been measured in inches, created by forces beyond intention or kindness. There was no lesson written into it, no promise it would happen again. Only the quiet certainty that, for this moment, life had held on. For a long while, no one moved. Mara remained where she was, her body curved protectively around Leo, as if the river might rise again if she looked away. Her tongue moved in slow, steady strokes across his soaked fur, cleaning away the mud and the fear together. Each lick was deliberate, grounding, a quiet promise that the worst had passed. Leo's small body trembled beneath her touch, not from cold, but from the release of terror his young mind could not yet understand. Gradually, his breathing slowed. The other cubs edged closer, their movements cautious, unsure whether the danger had truly gone. They pressed in against their mother's flank, drawn by instinct toward warmth and safety. None of them made a sound. Even now, silence felt like the wisest choice. In the wild, noise invited attention, and attention invited risk. The Savuti channel returned to its earlier stillness, as though the violence that had torn through it minutes before had never existed. The water smoothed itself into calm reflections once more, sunlight gliding across the surface in soft bands of gold. Downstream, Koba stood knee-deep in the shallows, lowering his massive head to drink. He did not look back. He did not pause. His role in the morning's drama had ended the moment his territory felt secure again. Mara lifted her head slowly and looked toward the river. There was no gesture of gratitude, no sign of recognition between species. Nature offered no rituals for thanks, yet in her steady gaze there was something quieter and deeper, an awareness that Leo's life had been spared by forces beyond strength, beyond intention. It had not been courage that saved him, nor mercy, nor even vigilance. It had been coincidence, shaped by instinct and territory, by paths crossing at exactly the right moment. For those who watched wildlife from afar, through a nature documentary, a conservation program, or the lens of a safari travel camera, this moment might have seemed miraculous. But here, on the riverbank, it was simply how survival sometimes worked. The wild did not promise fairness. It offered chances, rarely and without warning. Mara nudged Leo gently with her muzzle. He stirred, lifting his head unsteadily, eyes blinking against the light. His legs shook as he tried to stand, and for a moment he faltered. Mara stayed close, her presence a living support system, stronger than any protection plan the natural world could offer. Leo leaned into her, finding balance again, and managed a few tentative steps. The pride began to move. They turned away from the river, instinct guiding them back toward higher, safer ground. Each step carried them farther from the place where Leo had nearly vanished, farther from the invisible line between life and loss. The channel slipped behind them, already reclaiming its quiet indifference. Leo walked close to his mother now, no longer lagging behind. His pace was slow, but determined. The memory of the river would not leave him. Not today, perhaps not ever, but it would shape him in ways only the wild could. Survival left marks deeper than scars. As they disappeared into the tall grass, the morning resumed its course. Birds returned to the reeds. The wind stirred softly. To the land itself, nothing remarkable had occurred. Another life had been tested. Another life had continued. And in that continuation lay the unspoken lesson of the Savuti channel. Sometimes the greatest help does not come from intention or kindness, but from the last place anyone would expect. In a world governed by fragile balance and constant risk, life endures, not because it is protected, but because, every so often, the river gives something back. If this story touched your heart, take a quiet moment and let us know you were here. You don't need to write a long comment, just type 1 if you believe Leo was given a second chance, or 0 if you think nature simply followed its own rules. Your comment helps this story reach others who still believe that every life matters. And if you want to keep discovering these rare emotional moments from the wild, stories of survival, chance, and the bonds that hold life together, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The next story is already waiting for you.